Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hot Mess But Blessed with myself, Olivia Rose. So, this is a very, very late episode, too. I'm talking probably about over a month late. So, considering your girl said it was going to be a weekly podcast, God, I am hot and bothered. Like the weather has been popping. But yeah, so considering I said it was going to be a weekly podcast, it hasn't exactly gone to plan, but all with good reason, I think, anyway. So I went away for 1 week, being the first reason. Um, I would say lovely little breakaway, which it was. However, a little bit griefy, but I mean, this is the reality of my life now. So I can't escape reality. Grief is going to follow me even if I hop on a plane and try and avoid it. It still follows you. So it was a lovely little breakaway, and it was nice just to sit by a pool for a week and just try and relax as much as possible. And then the second reason being, after the first episode went live, got out there, because at the start I actually didn't post the fact that I'd done a podcast. I actually just posted it onto Spotify, main Instagram account, but obviously it came up on suggested for people's accounts. So people just found it, started listening to it, and I thought, you know what, fuck it, let's just post it. Let's post it. And everyone was so incredibly supportive. Like I knew people would listen to the podcast, but so openly, so publicly, and so outwardly supportive. So that was extremely overwhelming in a good way. So everyone's like lush messages from like friends of friends, people I just know of, like the list goes on. Like honestly, it was so encouraging, and definitely, the comments that people were making just really made me want to go for it even more and just really push this now to actually be a weekly podcast. I mean, I'm gonna try and make a promise. But yeah. And then thirdly, the reason that this podcast kind of came around is that my grief at the moment has been absolutely outrageous. I have literally been racked with grief at the moment. So I've actually filmed this episode, I'm not even gonna lie, like numerous times already. But it just, when I listened back to it, it just didn't, I was so flat in it, obviously, understandably. And I also felt like I was exposing too much of my personal life in those episodes. But I spoke to my mum and like a couple of girls from work, and they were like, you just have to be like so raw with like this thing, because people aren't going to get it otherwise. Like people need to know what happened, so it kind of makes more sense moving up, like moving forward. And yeah, but obviously because I am such a private person, it's just so vulnerable to post all this. But like honestly, if it does help one person, like I keep banging on about, that is all that matters. And if someone can listen to it who can relate to me, like I know people have already, it just shows that, it's not as isolating as it feels, and we're all in this thing called life together. So the episode today, I'm gonna try and keep a very long story like wrapped into about 20 minutes, hopefully, and also just giving the main points and not, doing what I do and waffling like a queen. So, yeah, I'm going to get into it. So, it is the night that everything changed, basically. So, the accident itself and how my dad passed away. So, we're going back to January now, the 27th, I believe it was a Friday. Um, I remember I had my last PT session in the morning, which was probably the last time I went to the fucking gym. I think I've literally been like twice since. And I was really getting myself into a good little routine, and I actually started to enjoy the gym. And that, fell off the wagon. So yeah, so it was my last PT session. I rang my mum and chewed, and I was like, "What time am I meeting you?" Because we had an event at the Celtic Manor in the afternoon. It was the Greatest Try event, and it was like a bit of a celebration for Tudor and like his work boys, because it was like a post Christmas, like Christmas works do basically. So Tudor got all of his closest family and friends together, and we all went down and had a stunning afternoon. Like it really was. It was all Tudor's nearest and dearest, the people he cared about most, all in one room together and having the loveliest time. I have so many pictures and videos from that night, and I am someone who loves to take pictures and videos anyway, but I took numerous, and looking back on them, it's actually obviously very bittersweet, but you can see from the pictures and videos how much of a lush time we did have. Anyway, so I'm rambling already. So that was that. So, just to give a little bit of background before I go into the full story of Tudor's health in general. So, overall, his health was absolutely fine. There was nothing wrong with him. He wasn't ill. He didn't die, of any kind of illness. He was a healthy man. Prior Around Christmas time though, he was having a lot of funny turns. So he like blacked out a couple of times, was complaining of like really like chronic headaches on the right side of his head. And he was really on a bit of a health kick to try and solve whatever the problem was. He went to the doctors, they said he was fine. So, all in all, he was absolutely fine. There was nothing wrong with him. It was a very sudden and unexpected death for all of us. So, that night we went out. Obviously, I had a couple of drinks. I didn't drink because I was driving, because I had work the next day, and my brother left early because he had rugby the next day. Tudor can drink like a tank. He is a party boy through and through. He can handle his drink, but he was just very disorientated. Like, he didn't drink excessive amounts, just to note, and just very disorientated, very wobbly on his feet, and he just wanted to go home. So he said to me at 8:30, "Can we go?" I said, "No, let's ride it out a little bit longer. You're fine. Like, just enjoy it." And then it was 9:30, and I was like, "Look, come on, then you're ready to go. I can see you're tired. Blah blah blah." So I was walking back to the car, and my stepbrother came with me. As Tudor was just so disorientated and wobbly on his feet, he was like, "Look, I'll just give you a hand back to the car because it's quite a way." So we got to the top of the stairs for the parking lot, which was outside. So these are like outdoor stairs, or like stainless steel, and then the concrete floor, that kind of staircase. So I just looked at my stepbrother, said, "Look, I'm fine now. My car's at the bottom of these stairs. We'll be fine. You just carry on." And as I did then, me and Tudor began walking down the stairs. He was a little bit ahead of me. And all of a sudden, on about the fourth or fifth step from the bottom, Tudor just completely collapsed, essentially, and straight down, hit his head onto the concrete floor at the bottom of the stairs. I, was little rallying down behind him, and I was like, "Tudor, come on, get to the car." Got a little bit further down, and I then began to see the blood coming out of his head, his ears, and his nose, and I thought, fuck, 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 fuck. I got into contact with my stepbrother. I said, "You need to call an ambulance." And then it was within then about 15, 20 minutes maybe that the Welsh Air Ambulance were at the scene, the paramedics were at the scene, and because it was a head injury, obviously it was made a priority and they came imminently. Uh, my mum and my sister-in-law were then contacted by my best friend saying that Tudor had fallen down the stairs because no one was answering their phone basically to me. In that meantime, when I was trying to get people down, to me and Josh. But yeah, so I rang my best friend and I was like, "Can you just try and can you ring Mum or something? Because no one's answering me. I think they just think I'm ringing, obviously not for this." Because when someone else rings you and it just kind of sparks a little bit of, "Oh my God, something must be wrong." So she answered the phone to him. He told her where I was, and she came down to me. Um, and oh my God, when my mum came down, she literally just don't think she realised the severity of it. And my sister-in-law and my mum just came down, just literally fell to the floor crying when she got closer to him and noticed how severe it was, because it just looked like a murder scene essentially. Like, there was blood everywhere. I had his head in my hands, and there was just like blood seeping through, when I was just like crying, just looking at them, like just vacant almost. I know my sister-in-law said she'll just remember like my face and how I just looked so helpless essentially. Um, they came, the paramedics and the Welsh Air Ambulance, and what I didn't realise was that the Welsh Air Ambulance is actually a critical care team, and they're incredible. They carried out a lot of critical care work at the scene for Tudor. So as soon as obviously they got on the scene, they kind of shooed us away, cut all of his clothes off, and just began working on him then. We were told to make our way to the Heath, which also was like the first time where I was like, shit, this is bad. Because I thought we were just gonna like stroll down to the Gwent, he was gonna have a couple of stitches and he'd be home. But no, we got told to go to the Heath. My brother then came down and picked us all up and took us down. And that car journey, like every moment from that moment was just like crippling. Got to the Heath. Tudor arrived about an hour later than us because there was work being carried out at the scene with the Welsh Air Ambulance. He got to the hospital, I think it was around midnight, and they just said to us, look, we got called into a family room as we were all in the A&E waiting room, and obviously we didn't need to be there because it wasn't an accident emergency, it was more critical than that. And we all just looked horrendous, like there was just blood all over us, we were all crying, we are all like just, but not in there, it was just like our faces, you could just tell that we'd been through shit. So they moved us into a family room and just explained, look, we need to take him down to theatre within the next hour, otherwise this is life ending. And of course, the response of me and my family was, get out, do it, just do what you need to do. They explained to us it would be about, I think, 4 to 5 hours that the surgery would take. So we got moved upstairs to the ICU ward and put into a family room where then the wait began. I think it was about from 1 a.m. till 6 a.m. We just sat in this really quiet, dark room. The ward was so quiet. It was almost quite eerie, essentially. The nurses were stunning. They were coming in and out, giving us teas and biscuits. And I don't know if anyone has ever been in that position where you are waiting to hear results of how a surgery went that is, well, at the time was like life-saving. Those hours are horrendous. Like you are literally trying to have normal conversations when the situation is the furthest thing from normal, and you're just looking at each other, maybe trying to sleep. I mean, I don't think anyone really did sleep, obviously, because it's just that wonder of how the hell is this going to go, like what is happening, just trying to digest the scenario that we were in. So it got to about 6 a.m. The neurosurgeon came in and explained, he's got over the first hurdle. He survived the theatre. The operation went well. They basically, what they done was remove a part of his skull because he had experienced a traumatic brain injury. Obviously, there was swelling of the brain. They took a part of the skull out to let the brain essentially, breathe. And yeah, so he then got put onto the ICU ward, and about 7 a.m. then that Saturday morning, we went in and saw him, gave him a big kiss, and was just like, you've got this. You have got this. You're going to be fine. And looking back on it, little naive Liv. But the whole time, the consultants always explained to us the odds are stacked against him. This is, pretty much an extreme case. Yeah, all the bad things were told to us, and we were never given any false hope. But as a family, you always want to hope and pray that your loved one is going to come out of it okay. Tudor was then in ICU for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then those 3 to 4 weeks consisted of myself going to the Heath every day, twice a day, to sit by his bedside and be with him and talk to him. Obviously, family came down in that time too. We played him music, we told him stories of the day, we played video recordings of like his grandkids and my little sister, and the nurses were always incredible. He in that time he spent in ICU, he never made any progression. He was on sedation for the first, I actually can't remember timescales now, so I'm not going to say it, but he was on sedation for X amount of time. He got taken off, and then he basically went into his own, it's like self-induced deep coma. He had some, obviously, the breathe, like the tubes down his throat and stuff to help him breathe, etc. So that's what the equipment in ICU done for him, was just keep him breathing. It got to a point then where they basically explained to us, look, the odds are still stacked against him, so we're skipping forward to like 3 weeks, say. And they said it is very unlikely that he is going to recover from this. But as a family, we kept saying, no, please just give him a chance, please give him time. So with that being said, as we wanted to prolong the chance, being able to see a chance of him coming out of this situation, they explained we're going to have to put a tracheostomy in him. So obviously that was something that we had to discuss as a family and discuss with the consultant of what we wanted to do. But those tubes down his throat could basically cause viruses, and you could pick up anything. So they preferably want to take those out after X amount of time. So we decided to go ahead with the tracheostomy. So with the tracheostomy being done, then it meant that the care on ICU was no longer needed, and he needed to be in a more of a specific area. So we got moved to the neurological ward in the Heath. And they'd always explain to you with the tracheostomy problems that can occur. And 2 days after he had his tracheostomy fitted, he caught pneumonia, which was explained to us that it wasn't uncommon, but for just how ill Tudor was with his traumatic brain injury, it was just frightening. So the moment I found out that he had pneumonia, and it was actually, we thought it was going to be the end for how ill he was, I was actually in London about to see Chris Brown. So I went to London on the February the 16th. I was meant to stay the night with my friend who lives there, and I was so apprehensive about going. I was like, I don't think I want to go. No. My family went, look, you've been back and forth for God knows how long now. Just take some time for you. Everything's going to be fine. He's had his tracheostomy fitted. So this was like the February 14th that he had the tracheostomy fitted. And then everything was fine for the first day or so. So they were like, look, go. Everything's fine. He's stable. He's on a new ward. It's good. Just go. Go and enjoy yourself. So, sod's law, as I did, it was a night that he nearly died the first time. Sounds awful. So I was in the O2 with my friend. I was having a couple of drinks in Las Iguanas. I was literally so anxious the whole time. She literally said, like, when I got to Paddington, I just said to her, I feel like a fish in a fishbowl. Like, how am I here? Like, what is going on? Like, my dad's in the hospital bed. Like, how am I here? There was so much guilt around it. I just felt absolutely awful. And she even said to me, like, after, she was like, you just seem so disconnected from like the world, basically, bless her. And yeah, so we sat in Las Iguanas, had a little drink, a little bit of food or whatever. And I contacted my mum and I just said, look, how is everything? I just need to know before I go into the stadium now, like, how everything is he okay? And she was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, kind of hurried me off the phone and was just like, look, have a lovely time. So I was like, something's wrong, I can tell. She's hurrying me off the phone, something isn't right. So anyway, I proceeded to go in, went into the stadium, the support act was on. I was trying to almost settle and just think, just try and live in the present, just try and live in the present. But about 30 to 40 minutes after I made that phone call to my mum saying, is everything okay? My phone then rang. I could feel it vibrating in my bag. And I thought, oh, fuck, I knew it. I just knew something was wrong. So got my phone out of my bag. It was my brother calling. The signal is always diabolical in stadiums, isn't it? So I was like running to the back of the stadium. It was so loud. And I was just like, I just answered it. And he was just like, you need to come home. Tudor's caught pneumonia. He's really, really ill. We don't know how long he's got left to live. That is just when, like, my world just like fell apart for the first time. I looked at Sasha and I just explained what happened, and she was just obviously just burst out crying over, and she was just so emotional and was just like, we need to get you out of here. Let me call Jack, which is a partner who I'm also really good friends with. And she was like, he'll grab your stuff. let's get you on a train back home. So I didn't even cry. I just went into like this state of shock. And we were trying to get out of the O2 and no one would let us out. It was so weird. Like everyone's like, you can't leave, you can't leave. I was like, I need to leave. It's a family emergency. Went to like 20,000 different exits, it felt like. And because everyone was still actually coming into the concert, we had to run through them all, through the barriers and just leave. We jumped on a tube. I got back to Paddington. I missed a train back home by about, honestly, like 4 minutes or something ridiculous like that, and I had to wait another hour for a train. um Jack bought me like some Percy pigs, absolute legend. So we just sat like on this chair and I was just like in the waiting area for the train, and it was just, I was still trying to keep myself composed, stay together. Just, you just need to get home, Liv, you just need to get home. And then they sat on the train with me until it left, and I made my way back home. So I think I got back to my mum at about 11, 20 past 11 in the evening, and then she took me straight to the hospital. When we got there, she explained to me that Tudor's breathing was just so much worse than it was before, when she left prior, because it was just the most stressful thing to on look and watch, because his breathing was just so heavy, and you could tell he was really, really struggling to stay alive, basically. And my mum was just, the fear was just set into us then, and we were so petrified that, I don't even, the monitor was just going to flatline and just beep, and he was going to die there and then in front of us. We were honestly petrified, and it was such a stressful situation to be in. Like, we didn't even want to be next to his bed. It sounds awful, but because it was just so heartbreaking to watch. um it was that so bad then that people actually, family were called to the hospital, as we didn't know how long he had left. I think we stayed there then until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Gave him a little kiss goodbye, and we left, not even knowing if that was going to be the last time we were going to see him. We had a little revelation then, I think it was the following day, where he began to make intentional responses, which, like I said, he didn't make any progression in the time that he was in hospital, which was a clear sign that he wasn't going to recover, which obviously the consultants did explain pretty much from day one, and how poor the prognosis was. So this was even a shock to them that he actually began to respond to commands. So we started squeezing and responding when you said, can you squeeze our hands for us, which he did begin to do. So as he carried out that action, he actually then got taken out of end of life care and put back onto the ward, which is quite unheard of, I think, from what I gathered from speaking to consultants and nurses, because the one consultant who led him in the ICU came down to the neurological ward and just said, I've heard what's happened, like, what's going on? Like, basically, you shouldn't be doing this. So we were obviously all absolutely ecstatic, like over the moon. We thought, oh my God, is this the start of, you know, the recovery? Is this, we've given him like these 5 weeks to try and prove himself. Like, is this it? Is this the moment? But a long story short, that was definitely just a spike in brain activity, because it was about, a week then he was left on the ward, but with no progression again. It was just like that one evening, he just spiked in brain activity, which was explained to us as quite normal. And another week went by then where, look, no progression. So we had a meeting with one of the consultants who were leading him, and that meeting was the one that we knew there was nothing more they can do. There was no more, like, nothing more that we could do as a family. Obviously we, like, there was much we could do anyway, but from like a healthcare perspective, there wasn't much else they could do. So he showed us the brain scans um in the meeting, and he just explained, look, we can see now very, very clearly, and it's very evident that your dad isn't going to make a recovery from this. He has an extreme TBI, traumatic brain injury. He has global swelling of the brain. the best case scenario is that he regains consciousness, but he will need a feeding tube, he'll be in a wheelchair, he won't know who you are, just the absolute worst of the worst, basically. And then the worst case scenario is that he would stay vegetative in the state he was in for months on end. And as we all know, who would want to live a life where you were such a busy businessman, you were a social butterfly, like literally he loved going out, having a good time, such a family man, who would want to then not know who they are, their family are being cared for 24/7. It is no life whatsoever, what was explained to us. And it was in that moment we knew, as immediate family, we all unanimously agreed what we had to do and the choice that we had to make. And it was the most gut wrenching, heart wrenching day ever. And it was that day then we decided that it was best to let him go. And the following morning, then, which was Wednesday, the 1st of March, he passed away. And what they done was basically take his tracheostomy out, because that was a quicker way essentially of letting him go. And it was very peaceful. And yeah, I don't know what else more to say. But saying goodbye to him and knowing that was, this is where I'm going to go, Seth. But saying goodbye to him and knowing that that was going to be the last time I would ever see him was like the hardest moment of my life. Like, I remember being sat in the room on my own, and one of the nurses came in. We had like a less relationship, and I was just like, I don't even know if I can say goodbye to him. Like, I don't even know if I can do it. And she was like, look, he wouldn't have even known. He basically was just in such a deep coma, like he wouldn't have even known we were there. Like, they basically said to us, the deputy nurses and the consultant, the moment he hit that floor, he would have known nothing since, like nothing, which actually I'm so glad of. Like, his last memory is literally dancing with us in the Celtic manor. And I'm just so glad that's his last memory, and he didn't know that any of us were, you know, he didn't know that we knew he was in pain, if you know what I mean. Well, he wasn't even in pain because he was just so, it's like he literally died the moment he hit the floor, because his body in that bed was, he wasn't there. Like, he wasn't there. You could feel it. He just wasn't. And I think if anyone's been in this situation, like, you'll know what I mean. Like, he was just a body there breathing with support from like a tracheostomy, or prior to that it was the tubes. And he just, yeah, he died the moment he hit that floor, which was like January 27th, but he was obviously clinically dead from the 1st of March. But yeah, so saying goodbye to him was like the most gut wrenching thing I've ever done. And when I think back on it, it makes me want to burst out crying, because this is what it was like. And I was just like pouring my heart out to him, even if he could hear me or not. But like I said in the first episode, like everything was, like, nothing was left unsaid. We poured our hearts out to each other in birthday cards, text messages. Like, we were always so openly supportive of one another, and as a family and we were all just obsessed with each other, and it was always spoken, which I'm very, very grateful and thankful for. But I'm probably just gonna have to wrap this episode up. But that is pretty much the night of what happened. But going back to what I was saying at the start of the episode, the funny turns. So, when we spoke to the consultant that day that we had to make the really hard decision, we said to the consultant and the two nurses, do you think something happened to cause him to fall? And something happened prior to him having the fall? And they all nodded their heads in sync and said yes. It would never be a fact, never be definitive, but everyone along the way. And the way I obviously described that, it was literally like he collapsed and passed out. It wasn't like he tumbled or tripped or fall, like, that kind of fall. It was like a clean, like he passed out. So it seems as though, with obviously what we explained prior to Christmas, with him having blackouts, the chronic headaches, the stress that he was under, must have led him to have a stroke, a brain hemorrhage, something along those lines, which created him to fall, which would obviously explain, prior to that, his he was so disorientated, so wobbly on his feet, completely off balance, etc. But yeah, so we honestly do believe that he had a stroke on those stairs, which made him fall. But then the impact of the fall, and that traumatic brain injury was what killed him. And that is the story of what happened. A very, very, excuse me, a very, very sudden and unexpected death of the greatest man who walked the earth. But all I can say is that I am actually thankful that he had no idea it happened, and his last night on earth was literally spent with those he cared about the most. Obviously, taking away all his little grandkids that he loved. But yeah, I'm just so glad he didn't know anything of what happened, because he would have hated for us to experience what we experienced in hospital. He would have hated us all to have been there and gone through that. So I'm glad he had no idea of it. I could ramble on all day, but I'll save that for another episode. But that is just a little bit of background of the story of how it all came to an end and the night that changed our lives forever. So thank you very much for I can't even end this episode. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you all in episode 3.